Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming to our presentation on how AI has delivered coaching for skills. I know this is the buzzword for the moment, AI, and what we're going to show you is the art of the possible with coaching for skills. So just before I start, my name is Nuri Sarzan, and I'm a director at Saffron Interactive. Prior to me leading Saffron, I was a consultant at the big consulting firms, so a partner at KPMG, and then I also held in-house roles, global roles at BP, and regional roles at Lend-Lease. So that's just a little bit about me. What we're going to look at today is how can coaching help with the skills challenge? We all know we're in the thick of the skills challenge at the moment. How can coaching actually help that? Let's look at the coaching technology maturity model. So how can technology be used to help with coaching? And where are you on that maturity scale? And I have to say that maturity scale has been developed by Sam Isaacson, a good friend of ours, who's a certified coach and an author of a lot of coaching books. And then how is technology actually currently being used in coaching? And then lastly, what can be done and what is the art of the possible? So, first of all, over to you, and just a hands up, how are you currently using coaching within your organization at the moment? Who's using it for top leadership only? Any hands up? No one? No one's using coaching for top leadership? Oh, one, we've got some there. Oh, we've got a couple, so maybe, okay. What about for line managers for coaching teams? Okay, some of the same hands up. So looks like senior execs and managers you're definitely using coaching for. Anyone using it for the whole workforce? Oh, fantastic. There's a lot of people there with hands up. Fantastic. And what about not using it, but there's a recognition that it may help? A couple of people there nodding. Excellent. Okay. And then not using it at all because we don't actually see the value in it. No one. Okay, so you're all bought in. That's great. Okay, well, moving on. How is coaching and skills development actually even linked? So just looking at some of the statistics around this, 67% of HR leaders agree that coaching leads to improved performance, which must mean about developing skills. Now, this is what HR leaders say, so it was pretty subjective in terms of the poll here, but it was done by the HR Research Institute. So let's look at this in a bit more detail with other surveys, and you can see here that from a people perspective, there is a lot of benefit that in terms of job retention, in terms of increase in productivity, and just enjoying their job. And that is important in this day and age because we want people to develop within the organisation. We know that there's a skills shortage. So if we can actually improve the skills of our people that we already have rather than having new hirings all the time, we're obviously going to impact the bottom line. And then 48% said that actually this was a direct impact on the strength of the organisation because people became more resilient, okay? More resilient to change, able to adapt more easily. So that's great for people. Let's have a look at the business case for actual organisations. And this was quite a serious piece of research done with over 1,000 top performing companies. And what was found is that those with a strong coaching culture had also got better business results as a result of having coaching within the organisation. So you can see here the orange line is the ones that are high performing organisations that have a coaching culture, and you can see that it impacts externally on customers. Customer satisfaction is actually increased. Regulatory compliance, so they had less issues from a regulatory perspective because more people were developing their skills around risk management. Again, voted, quite highly in terms of employer of choice. You can see the orange lines are way ahead of those purple ones. Profitability went up, is higher. Productivity in terms of output, so labour output, again, much higher. And then innovation, it's also encouraging innovation within organisations. So if ever you needed a business case, this is probably the slide for you to go to in terms of embedding coaching widely within your organisation. But what is effective coaching and who does it, within the organisations? For one thing, it has to be consistent, and I don't mean regular. What I mean by that is that your coaches themselves have to be consistently good. And that's quite difficult, even with external coaches. Getting that consistency is actually quite difficult. Regular, the well-intentioned manager, who might actually be very good at coaching and on-the-job coaching, just doesn't have the time, is really time poor. So effective coaching has to be regular. And lastly, it has to be structured. It's not just a conversation that doesn't lead anywhere. It's a conversation that is structured to motivate the individual to find their own answers, find their own pathway, but to actually take action at the end of the day. And that's the key thing. The individual needs to take action. Now, the trouble with executive coaching or face-to-face coaching with individuals are all of these things tend to happen ad hoc and not in a consistent and structured manner. And that's where using technology as an enabler can actually help. And as I said, this technology maturity model has been created by Sam Isaacson, who has consulted with a lot of organisations, and this is his model. So I just want to take you through that, and maybe you might want to say where you are on that model. So the first is where I think there's quite a number of people. It's pretty ad hoc, it's reactive, and there isn't actually any use of technology, and it's usually the managers or the line managers that are actually doing it. And that's fine, again, if those three things about consistency and sort of quality and regularity and the structuredness of it can happen. And then at the other end of the scale is completely optimized, where coaching processes are really efficient and they're understood within the organization. There is an actual ecosystem, so learning, development, coaching is all aligned, individual pathways are all developed, and the technology is actually increasing the value of the face-to-face coaching, if you like, without increasing the risk. And then in between, there is some consistency, but they're obviously all reliant on some key people, some key champions who do it really well. And there is a bit of use of technology, but not very much. And then defined, they know what there ought to be, but is it actually happening on a frequent basis around the whole organization? And then measurable, where coaching processes themselves are they making a difference to either the individual or the bottom line? Is there a way of actually measuring it? So over to you then. Where do you think you might be on your coaching culture within your organisation? So anyone at stage 1? Yeah, there's a couple of people at stage 1, stage 2. Okay. Stage 3. There's a couple again. 4. Are you measuring the effectiveness of coaching? No. And possibly none at 5, I would say. So in Sam's experience, not my experience, but in Sam's experience, most organisations are at 1 or 2. Okay, so that's where most organisations are. So if you're there, you're with the pack, basically. But as you can see, there is a real benefit to moving up that curve. So how can technology enable that coaching culture and really make it thrive within your organisations? Well, I'm just going to go through a couple of things that are being used already. The first is actually a management system, okay? And this allows you to know who's actually taking coaching, who's actually a coach themselves, who can actually, if you like, be a mentee. So it's like a learning management system, but essentially for coaching. And that's kind of something that a number of organisations already are using. This is one stage further. This is where it's almost like Uber. That's how Sam actually categorises this. It's, there's an awful lot of external coaches, and you can, they're all together and you can actually access them when you want, subject to a certain amount of quota that an individual has. Everything is done through a coaching platform, but it's basically one-on-one through Zoom or Teams or whatever. But there is a structure around it, and there are certified coaches that can be accessed. The third is, I keep going back and forth on these. Is an app like Coach Vicky. So here you can have coaching conversations. And that one is actually being used in all consumer apps, as you've known, but there are specific coaching apps that can be used for workplace skills and goal building. So I think the next question on your lips might be, well, is technology, and especially that last kind of coaching app where there isn't a human person really behind it, is that effective? And you can see here, this is from ResearchGate. It's open research. It's been peer reviewed, so it's actually got a lot of strength behind it. And you can see here that the experiment is an AI coach, which was like in the previous Coach Vicky version, and in fact exactly using that kind of model. And you can see the green line is actually a human coach. And you can see that the technology enabled AI coach actually outperforms a human coach. And this is a human certified coach. This is not, a manager doing this as part of his role. Now, a lot of you might find that surprising because everyone's thinking, well, where is the human touch? The great thing about coaching is the human touch. Well, unfortunately, what happens here and what's driving these results is that humans get bored. They get bored of you bringing up the same issue and not dealing with it. And that's why their effectiveness wanes and the effectiveness of the coaching itself wanes. So interesting reading. I really would suggest that you go and have a look at this research yourself. It's absolutely fascinating. So how can we put all of that together? Taking sort of an understanding of how people actually are motivated, taking the neurosciences, taking the AI, and what could be the art of the possible. And I would suggest that this might look something like it. So at Saffron, we've invented a coach called Ada. The coach itself, as you can see, is an AI-generated person. And I'll just show you the conversations that can be had with Ada. So the first thing about it is that it is personalized. And it's available on all the machinery that you would want. And what it does is guide you through your own individual journey by talking to you and following through on guided conversations. And the advantage of this is that it's low cost enough to be able to do this for your whole workforce. And when I say the whole workforce, as you can see here, you can actually use voice, video, or text. It's got an inbuilt skills assessment for all the essential soft skills, plus digital skills that an individual can rate themselves on. So these are some of the types of skills. They're built as skills cards, and they're built on a behavioral way so that they are actionable items. I do this on a regular basis, and that's the way that it then links to individual training resources, whether that happens to be on your LMS or through a library of our own. So that's great, but then what you need to do is follow through with an action plan. And this is where the digital really helps, using a guided conversation again, using the GROW model. So it enables you to put in GROW kind of goals. And then what's really good is having that personalized pathway. It can help you to see your progress. It can also help a manager see where their team's progress is and intervene in real time with an individual to support them so that they are less stretched but know when to go and intervene. Because, you know, we all know that a 2-week gap can actually really set someone back when they need that coaching conversation pretty much, you know, in real time. So that is the art of the possible. Let's look at, well, you know, how has it been used and what have the results been? So this is the hard data for a program that we did for 6 months. And it wasn't a small number of users. It wasn't a L'Oreal or a Revlon kind of pilot. There was over 400 people involved in this, and they were from people with learning difficulties, learning disabilities, and covering the whole spectrum from age 19 to over 65-year-olds. And the hard data showed that the action plan was actively used by 79% of the respondents, and the actions were actually completed. And there was a reduction in terms of concern about the future. So as people get more confident in using and progressing, this is where action, small action through the GROW model thinking, actually makes people, you know, act. Instead of getting frightened, they start acting. And that's critical for you know, improving skills, because there's so much to do. And so having an individualized pathway and an individualized conversation can really start increasing that confidence. So after the skills assessment, you can see the confidence rising from 36% to 92%. And it's those kinds of emotions that the NLP within ADA can also measure. So all of this data, as you can see from the dashboards, is all measurable. And that's the great thing about data. So this is what the data is showing us. Let's have a look at what the individuals think. And as you can see, in terms of the different components, there's a really, really high net promoter score from individuals. Upwards of 80% rating it as highly, 100% saying that they really felt supported. And then individual feedback on top of that, people are actually changing careers. They are actually developing. And this is just some of the qualitative feedback that we've had back. So just in conclusion, really, coaching is a really effective tool within an organization to upskill because it really helps people take action. It defines an absolute pathway for them that they can follow and cuts out the noise and the friction. So really encourage you to do that. And you can use technology like I've shown you to really be able to scale that within the organizations that you're in. AI, it's here. It might be a bit scary for some people. We've contained it. It does not include ChatGPT because we want to have contained but effective conversations here around the workplace. And we want something that's been tested and tried as well. So it can work collaboratively with your line managers who are trying their level best to coach their mentees. And as I said, you can actually measure not just the hard data, but also the soft data in terms of confidence, concern, feelings of happiness, etc., through the sentiment analysis. And obviously, it can be linked to your learning management systems, etc. So it's utilizing resources that you already have, but providing them to an individual effectively so that they can start their learner journey. And it's already in use and it's really making an impact. So you know that it's something that can be replicated within your own organizations. And that's it. Please come to our stand, which is just there. You can use the QR code to download any of the slides that you like, but come and play with Ada yourself if you so like. I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.